Hello, hello, hello. This is your Captain Panic speaking, and welcome back to another Touchdesigner tutorial. So today we have a look at how to turn any image into a mess of ink. And yeah, that's basically it. The technique also works really nice with videos, so you might want to check that out too. And it's kind of cool because you can adjust the amount of details you want in your random generated ink spreads, or you could make some changes in the blend modes later, which gives you a different results and more different details and everything you might want to have in your creation. So we will have a look at that later. In the meantime, let's start from scratch and see you on my screen. Okay, so welcome on my screen. You can already see I already loaded in the image and the video I want to use, and also you can see my default startup file. I received many questions about my default file, and I decided to record a tutorial on how the default setup is made and how it works, but it will definitely be a Patreon exclusive tutorial, since my default startup file is part of every Patreon project file I'm releasing, and so that makes more sense. And yeah, I don't really know yet when I will record the tutorial about that, but it will come. So be a little bit patient about this default file. In this tutorial I will do everything I'm doing without the default file, so you can follow along a little bit better. And yeah, so how we get started. So the first thing we will do is I want to see what's going on in the background, so I will connect the image I'm using to a null. So I am creating a null, and once again, this tutorial I will make a little bit more beginner friendly again, since my last ones were a little bit advanced, especially since I didn't mention any shortcuts or things I'm doing. So I will cover that now again. And to do that, what I just did is let's disconnect and delete it for now again. And I'm just clicking on this one, and then I'm holding on while this noodle is coming out of my node, and then I hit tab on my keyboard, and then I create a null. And to make this null, which will be my output, visible, I'm just hitting that display button, which is that blue circle here, and then I can see what's going on in the background. I could do that with multiple outputs if I want to compare different outputs or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of cool to know. And I'm deactivating that now, and we'll actually get started. So the first thing I want is I want this image to fit into another resolution. Right now it's a 5:4 resolution, but I want it to be a square. So I'm bringing in a fit. So I'm right clicking on that yellow noodle and insert operator and hit fit. So in that fit I'm using another resolution as this, and I want to use 920 and 1920, so it's a HD quality. And now you will see that I have some transparent background, since it fits this one inside of this one, but I don't want that. I just want this one to fill the whole space. So I'm just changing this to fit outside from fit best, and then it just fills my frame. So that was the first step, and now we will have a look at the technique we are going to learn. So first of all, I want to have some parts of that images which will turn into the inky mess, and I want that parts to be randomly defined. So I'm bringing in a noise, and I will connect this one to both inputs of the noise, and then I will change the output in this noise from noise plus input to just noise. So the first input will just define the resolution of this. So we will take the resolution out of this fit to use it in here. And the second input is the coordinate map, so it transfers the image we are using into a noise. And then we will make some changes to that noise. So first of all, I want this to be a high contrast image. So I'm turning down the exponent to null. So we have only two colors, which are black and white. And then I want more harmonics, which means more details. So I'm changing that to 4. And then I worked with a period of 1.96, I'm sorry. And also I'm changing the seed a little bit. So let's type in a random number, and there you go. Then we have some white parts and some black parts, which will make it more easily for the edge we are going to use now to give the image some cool details, which will turn into ink later. So another thing I will do to increase the quality and the details of everything we are using, I will change the pixel format, which you will find under common, to 32-bit float RGBA. So our output will be a little bit cleaner and better looking, but if your workstation is not that powerful, I recommend working with 16-bit float, or maybe even 8-bit float. I'm sorry, there's no 8-bit float, I think. Yeah, it will be the 8-bit fixed then. So, okay, let's continue and let's bring in the edge, which I want to use. And now you can see it traces the edges of the image we are using as the input. And we will also make some changes to this one, but I can't tell you the detailed numbers which you will need for your image, since that's very dependent on which image you're using. So for my image, a strength of 3.6 worked best, and I decreased the sample step a lot. So I'm just working with a sample step of 0.074, and I'm copying that and paste it on the y-axis too, which makes the lines a little bit thinner and more detailed. And also, I don't want that much detail, so I just increase the black level a little bit to something around 0.893. But once again, just play around with these numbers later when you can actually see what it's going to do to your image. So right now it's just abstract numbers I'm putting in here, but we will have a look at this later again. And then because I don't want these lines to be so sharp, I'm bringing in a blur after that. And I will decrease the filter size to 4 and leave everything else on default. So then, right now we have this monochrome image, but we want our ink trails to fit the image again. So I'm using a composite, and then I will bring in our image here again, and then it just multiplies. We just leave the operation mode on multiply our image colors onto the white edges. And yeah, so that's the first big step we needed to do. And then we will give us more space and then create a null here, because we completed one step and I just like to keep everything clean. And then I will connect that with our background now, because we need to see that now and it will be our output. So now we will head into a feedback loop, which is my favorite thing to do. And to do that, I'm inserting a composite. I will change the operation mode to over. And then out of that null again, I'm creating a feedback. Then I will connect this one to our composite and make this one the target layer. And then another thing I will do is change the operation mode in here, because this time I want the feedback to be above the null. And then, because I want to reset my feedback loop really fast, I'm bringing in a keyboard in chop and export this one on the pulse. So just make the viewer active, which you will do by hitting this sparkle sign, and then hold on here, go onto here until you see the pulse, and then onto the pulse and let go, chop the reference. And then whenever you hit 1, you reset the feedback loop. Right now we can't really see anything because we have nothing going on in our feedback loop. But of course we will change that now. And yeah, so now let's bring in our first operator in the feedback, which will be a displace. Then we don't need a displace weight of 1. We just need to turn it low, really low. So I'm turning it to null point null 1, and then leave everything else on default for now. And yeah, so let's create the image we will use to displace. And to do that, out of that feedback, I'm creating a composite again, and I will use this null as the second input for this comp. And I will change the operation mode to soft light. And then out of this comp, we create a slope. And the strength of that slope will be 8, and the sample step 5 and 5. And then let's see if we connect this one to the displace, what happens. So we get this really big blown out things that are going on, which is already the right way, but we want a lot of details, which we don't get right now. And I found a pretty cool way to bring in more details into that blown up trails. And this is just inserting a noise. and just use everything like this, I think. And then change the noise type to random GPU, and then let's make some changes here again. So the first thing, I will decrease the amplitude to 0.19 and the offset to 0.00. Excuse me, 0.091. Then let's reset that now. And now you can see we are getting more detailed trails, which is amazing. But right now they just go into that one direction. One direction. I don't mean the band. I mean the direction. And I want to change that a little bit. So I decided to turn down the offset weight to minus 0.901. So they go up. If you want them to go down, just keep everything like you had it. And then I just played around a little bit with this offset and had something like 0.2 here. So we spread a little bit more, and also I changed the source midpoint to 0.4 here. I don't really know what I did here. Actually, I just played around with all that parameters, and when I liked it, I just left it like it was. So just feel free to play around with these numbers until you get a result you enjoy. And yeah, so if those edges are too hard for you and you want it to be a little bit softer, so like you're using wet paper or stuff like this, you could bring in a blur after this, so it fades out a little bit more. But I recommend using a low filter size here, so you still have the details. And you could also decrease the sample steps even more if you just want the blur to be really, really subtle. So I'm keeping it like this now, and I'm annoyed by that yellow sign, and I think that's because this, nope, okay, that was the wrong direction, so let's just disconnect the second yeah, that's because the random GPU noise has this coordinate map, since it's just the grain. The random noise is a grain, so it can't have an image loaded in. It just can use the colors out of the first input. So, okay. Now we are pretty close to what we want, but right now we have a lot of transparent background and everything, which we don't want, because we want it to be a full image. So either way, you could insert a transform if you just want it to be a background color. So if you change the alpha here and turn on the comp over background, you can turn the background black. So those transparent spaces are like black paper. You could also change it to white or a cool color. Ooh, this is kind of nice. I didn't came up with this before, but I really enjoy this. And yeah, but let's keep it soft and use a white or maybe a little bit beige. I don't know if that's a word. This is the correct name of that color, or if I'm I'm sorry about that. Spelling mistakes. English still makes me kind of nervous. For those who don't know or who can't hear, I'm pretty sure it's pretty obvious. I'm from Germany, and so please excuse my bad English. Yeah, but enough talking from me. If we want to bring in our original image and blend it in with the image we just created, we could create another composite after this, and then create a select. And we want to bring in our fit here. And because I don't want this long noodle to go over all my clean node space, we could just use this, drag it onto the select, and have a nice and clean layout. Cool. And then connect it to the comp. And then let's make some changes to the operation mode. So this is totally up to you which blend mode you find the best. For me, the screen is kind of working the best because it's a kind of nice blending of image and abstract ink trails. But there are many cool and more crazy combinations you could use. Also, if you're really crazy, you can also use another operation mode in our feedback comp. So maybe a soft light, so it's just partially growing into the image, or overlay maybe. Yeah, just play around with this maybe. Well, that doesn't work, or maximum, sometimes cool. Yeah, a little bit boring, but feel free to play around with this. Just keeping it on over end screen. And we could stop here now, but actually I like my creations to be really colorful and more abstract. So my favorite thing to do is just insert another noise in the end, change the output to noise, and then maybe turn off the monochrome and play around with harmonics and different seeds to give me random colorful colors or color combinations and harmonics, which is my favorite way to color things. But another thing we could do is just insert a monochrome. Where is it? There it is. And then after that a lookup. So if you want more control over the colors of the ink trails, we can bring in a ramp. So I'm using this one as the input for the ramp, so it has the same resolution. And then I'm using this as the second input, and then I could just define what colors I want to be in that image. And that is kind of easy to understand, because on the left, where the black is, it will define how the dark areas of our image will look like. So if I change that black to something like red, all the dark areas will blend into a white for the highlights and a red for the dark tones, and in here will be the gray tones. So if I insert a green here, so the gray spaces will use that color. So if I want the highlights to be green, I can do that. Yeah. So this is a kind of cool way to control your colors, how you want them to look like. And also, if you want to combine some random colors or some random harmonics and your own colors, you could also use this noise, make it monochrome, and then load it in here, and then you have even more details and more looks you could use. So kind of cool trick. And yeah, so let's have a look at how this colorful thing looks like when we load in our video. And because what I found out, it's the videos work better with different blend mode combinations. So for example, use the overlay here and the, I don't know, maximum here maybe. or whatever combination works best for you. But I find that for videos there are better combinations than for still images, so you might want to keep that in mind whenever you try a video with the same settings. But for now, let's go back to our default and bring in the image again, because I want to show you what you can customize too. So as I mentioned, those edge and this noise operator have a lot of control over the overall image. So for example, if you reduce the harmonics in here, the areas will be a lot bigger and not that detailed. If you have even more harmonics, you will have even more details. If you turn down the period, you will have even more details. And yeah, so play around with that noise, and also play around with that edge. So the more details you have in that edge, the more details your image will have. The less details you have, like keeping this low, and the less details you will have here. The more you blur this, the more blurry your edges will be. So just play around with that operators. And yeah, that's everything I wanted to show in this tutorial. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. I hope you can forgive me for my bad English or my bad spelling. And I hope you're staying kind. See you next time. Bye bye.